Hello there. Welcome to Pause AI. My name is Will Patillo. I'm on the onboarding team, and I also run the weekly welcome meetings. This video is covering some of the basics about what Pause AI is about, what to expect when you join, and to help get you oriented. Our mission here is to stop frontier AI development. Now, there's a lot left out of that on purpose. This is intentionally vague because there are some people on the server that believe that there's a certain level of risk that's happening right now, but we don't really know how much risk there is. So first we need to understand AI a lot better to know what the risk is, and then bring that down to some sort of acceptable level, and then it's good. And then there are others who feel like AI is just all around bad news and it just should just be stopped forever. And all of that's welcome here. Pause AI's official stance on questions like this is agnostic, for the simple reason that it doesn't matter. Because the trajectory we're on right now is that whatever gets the big tech companies the most profit, that's what happens. And it doesn't matter what any of us regular people care or want or think about it. We just don't have any say at all in the process. So any disagreements we have just get washed out. None of it matters. And that's what needs to change for anything good to happen. If we could get to a point where these kind of distinctions mattered, then we'd be in a much better place. So that's where our focus is right now, is to just slow things down so we can get a handle on things and decide what comes next. Some of our large-scale policy asks, the first one, and the big one, and the source of our name, is to pause new large-scale training runs. So for those who don't know how AI works, a little very short primer is that the first stage of it is this giant training run that's like a ton of interconnected GPUs on server farms, all connected together. And it's training on basically all the text on the internet. And it's costs millions and millions of dollars to be able to have a single one of these runs. And there's only a handful of companies in the world that are able to do this. Now, once you get that initial training run, then the result of that can be fine-tuned on specific data sets to make the answers more useful. And then after that, there's applications development using traditional software to wrap the results of this model into a nice, clean user interface that's very easy to use for specific applications. And our focus is on that first stage, the big training run. Our second major policy ask is what's called compute governance, which basically means tracking some of the hardware that is needed for AI to run on. And then the third big policy ask is liability, making sure that the big tech companies that are building the AI are responsible for any harms that it causes, rather than just allowing lobbying to push the risk of liability downstream, either to the applications developers or even better from their perspective, onto the users who are misusing it in harmful ways. Some common themes in all of these big asks. One is that it's open-ended. The reason for that is because the space is constantly changing so much that it's hard to be really specific without that becoming out of date in like a month. The other common theme in these asks is that there's a focus on choke points. There's only a very small number of companies that can make these giant training runs. If you only need to coordinate 5 entities, that's a lot more reasonable than having to coordinate basically anyone who has a powerful enough computer to be able to run a Minecraft server. Once an AI model is created, then being able to mess around with it and fine-tune it to different things and to build applications for it is super accessible. And so it's basically pragmatic reasons for focusing on these parts of the chain. Next fundamental aspect of Pause AI is we take a very intentionally big tent philosophy. That means there are many valid reasons for slowing down AI progress. One of the big ones on the server is something known as X risk, which is the concern that basically AI is going to cause the death of everyone, total extinction of the human race, possibly the entire biosphere, AI going rogue, having goals of its own that are incompatible with those of people, destroying all of us as an instrumental step in achieving whatever it's going after. This is something that's been talked about extensively. I'll put links if you're interested in this topic and digging in deeper. The only thing I want to say about it is if it sounds science fiction-y, well, so did AI 5 years ago. And so you can't really use that as a metric for what's likely to happen. And also, second thing on this is listen to the experts. Jeff Hinton, who basically invented backpropagation, one of the core technologies behind AI, is really concerned about this. So is Yoshua Bengio. That's 2 out of the 3 of the Turing Award winners in AI. They probably know something about this technology that they helped create, and we should listen to them. That said, that is not the only reason to be concerned about AI. There are a lot of issues that are happening today. A big one is job loss. This is becoming increasingly relevant, especially right now with artists losing their jobs. But there's so many other types of work where this is going to be happening. Modern AI is different from other kinds of automation. It's very general purpose. You just train it on all the text of the internet, and it just figures out new skills on its own. Then there are other concerns too, like the impact that AI has on the environment, the implications it has for religion, cybersecurity concerns, on and on and on and on. There's lots of reasons. They all push in the same direction, so we got to work together if we're going to be able to have any chance at all at pushing back against the intense moneyed lobbying interests of big tech. As long as the people are divided, that's how the status quo wins. And the stakes are too high to let polarization keep us paralyzed. Now, one thing I want to mention on this big tent philosophy, just in case you show up and what I'm saying doesn't seem to match your experience, the people here who are interested in the X risk reasons for being concerned about AI, that's the historic roots of the movement. The people who are concerned about X risk saw all this happening long before anyone else, formed communities about it because they saw where the trend lines were going and they wanted to do something about it early. For that reason, a lot of the core organization has this kind of X risk focus. This leads to something that's very common in social movements that I've heard referred to as the paradox of political identity. To get a social movement going, it's really helpful if people are the same because they have this common experience, common understandings that just makes communication easier. It's just easier to socialize with people who are similar to you. But at a certain point, you run into the limits of there just aren't any more people like that to recruit anymore. And if you want to expand this mass mobilization rather than just a handful of nerds, then you need to be broader than that. But then there's a problem when this group is already established that has a certain collective identity, that new people come in, and even if all the people are there are totally accepting and open and everything else, you come in and you see everyone else that's different from you, and they all have this kind of shared language that doesn't match your background or your experience. It could feel like, am I in the right place? Maybe I should leave. And then other people who feel the same way as you have that same experience, and they also bounce. And so there's this self-reinforcing property where it becomes very difficult for a movement to expand once it's formed an identity, but forming that identity is what allowed it to exist in the first place. This is something we talk about in the internal meetings a lot. But one thing that you can do to help us break out of this common trap is to speak out. If you come in here and to PauseAI and you feel like your concerns are not being adequately represented, say something. Say what you're interested in. Say what brought you here. Because if you don't, there's going to be other people who share the same interests as you, who are also not speaking out for the same reason, and you're not going to be able to find each other. So speak out, make connections, form your internal groups. And if that's difficult, talk to us. Talk to some of the organizers. I'm always willing to accept and respond to direct messages and help us help you find your people and take ownership of your participation. So now I'm going to move on to a couple of nuts and bolts. PauseAI currently is primarily organized on a website called Discord. Discord is composed of servers. So PauseAI is a server on Discord. And you can see here is a list of a bunch of other servers that I'm a part of. So if I click on a server, then I jump my view to that. And then all the content happens in channels. So this is an example of an interest group for people who are interested in environmental impacts of AI, which I'm a part of. Then you can contribute to the conversation by typing in the chat. I'll just say here, this is a test message, please ignore. And then I can do things like replying to it. Sometimes the options will just be available here, or I can click more to see more options. Then I can click reply, and this is a reply. So if I had written this and someone else had replied, I would get a little notification saying that someone replied to my message. It also allows me to click here, and that'll jump the view back to what the reply is to. So if there was a comment way back here, and then I replied to it, the reply would show up at the bottom, but then I could click and it would jump back up to that initial message. I can also create a thread. This is a thread. And then I can also give the thread a name. When I create that, I can see the thread name right here. And then there's a message like this, which I click on it and it shows up here. So that's closed. Click the message. There I can see the thread and it keeps going. When I add more messages to it, the number of messages just gets longer and longer, but it doesn't clutter the main channel like this. And then right here, I'm just deleting this message. delete these. Okay. And then they're gone. So if you send something unintentionally, that's one way you can get rid of them. You can also edit messages sometimes, and you go here and then you can change it. So if you made some embarrassing mistakes or want to change anything, that's how that's done. You can also direct message people. So if I have someone here and I can click on them, I can send a message to this person directly. And then once I send someone a direct message, it shows up as a conversation. So if you go up on the direct messages up here, it's just above all the servers, then you can have conversations with individuals and converse back and forth with them. There are also virtual events where you can talk to people. So if I join one of these meeting channels, I can join a channel and then I can use this to turn on my camera. I can use this to turn on and off my microphone to mute and unmute myself. I can share screen and then exit the call by clicking hang up. So if there's multiple people in a meeting at once, then we'll be able to say hi to each other, talk face to face as it were, or by voice. This is just general for like scheduled meetings, Hangout if you just want to like be there and chat with whoever shows up. And then there's also internal meeting, which is just for organizers. If you want to know about when meetings are going to happen, there is up near the server guide, there is a thing of events. And I click on this and I can see all the events that are coming up on the server. So tomorrow at 7 a.m., and this is automatically adjusted for your time zone. So 7 a.m. at Pacific time, it'll show as a different time if you live somewhere else. There is a email writing workshop. And it looks like this is a series where it happens every week. Then I can scroll down and see all these kind of other events. Yeah, this is my welcome meeting that I host. There's a lot of other features that Discord has, and it can get kind of confusing. If you ever get confused or stuck on some Discord feature, feel free to reach out to myself or any of the other organizers and ask us questions about how to use it. Some basic rules of communicating with people on Discord. First, stay civil. Don't be a troll. Just basic internet etiquette, and people will tell you if you're breaking one of these rules. So you don't need to freak out about it. The same kind of rules that you'd have if you're talking to a person. If you have a disagreement about the PauseAI mission, or think we're going about it wrong, that's fine. We actually are totally encourage dissent, but there is a time and place for it. Specifically, there is a channel for disagreements right here. Oh, it looks like there's a bunch. So I'm going to mark these as red and jump ahead to the front. This is the place for that. And the reason we have this channel is we want to allow for these kind of conversations, but this is fundamentally an activist organization and we don't want it clogging up the general thread. Once you join and before you start posting a lot, take a look at all the threads that are available and try to see which channel is a good fit for what you're going to say. And if it's not clear, don't worry about it. This isn't like really strictly enforced, but it's just, people go to different channels because they have different interests, and you want to communicate to the people who are interested in what you're saying, not to people who are just going to find it a distraction. Also, highly recommend using that thread feature that I showed earlier, especially in the general channel. This is again to avoid clogging the channel with conversations that only a few people are interested in. One hard rule on the server is we do not condone violence. If you say anything at all about assassination or bombing or anything like that, that is a cause for an instant ban. If you have questions about that, feel free again to contact an organizer via direct message, and we'll be happy to sort that out. One other channel I want to point you to that's very important is the projects page. So that's on this list right here where you have projects. There's a whole bunch of them. If I look at one of them, I can click on it and see a bunch of stuff about this topic. I can like them to show that I'm interested. I can reply so that the person who created that project can find collaborators. If you have a new idea for a project, then you can create a new post, give an explanation, and hopefully find people who want to work with you. Now, this projects list can get kind of confusing. If you're having trouble navigating, it's too overwhelming, feel free again to message an organizer and we can set up a one-on-one meeting and give you some personalized advice, find out a little bit more about you, what sort of project you might be a good fit for. What we're kind of moving towards lately is teams for different categories of projects. And so we can just put you towards a team leader and then they can find more specific details within there. Oh, one thing I forgot, another feature on Discord, there's this thing called pinned messages. So I click on this and this will show some highly important messages that are pinned to that channel that we want to highlight. So I encourage you to check those out. The next channel I want to bring your attention towards is emotional support. We have this one here because thinking about really big problems, like the impacts that AI could have on the world, can get really depressing. Like it's just so big, and it feels like there's so little that us as individuals can do about it. That's really normal to feel that. Like a lot of people come to the server because they're really scared or angry or sad. One thing I want to suggest, however, is that it might actually be not just the fact that there's this big issue kind of looming over us that's getting you down. I found a couple of things that tend to help, that tend to bring people out of that sort of dark place. The first one is a sense of a lack of agency. It's not just that big things are happening, it's that I can't do anything about it. And so I feel powerless and meaningless. If you can get involved in something and feel like you're making a difference, that helps your emotional state a lot. Likewise, isolation is also really damaging to mental health. If there's something that is like really on your mind and there's like no one around to talk to about it, because this whole AI kind of stuff is still feels like it's out in the future, like it's very science fiction-y to a lot of people, and it can be hard to talk about. Finding a community of people who understand you that you can talk to, that also helps tremendously in feeling better about all of this. Dealing with those kind of issues, that goes a long way. But if you have a lot of pent up frustration or anger or other feelings, then the emotional support channel is a really good place to vent those kind of feelings. To just say whatever's on your mind and just get that stuff off your chest. Now, two things about this. First, if you're going to reply to other people or create threads, that's awesome. That's a really great way to be supportive, but be kind. Remember that anyone posting on emotional support, they're being exceptionally vulnerable in that moment. They're not necessarily thinking through what they're saying. So that is not a good time to get into like nitpicky debates and details. Leave the other channels for that. That's also totally appropriate to express anger if that's what you're feeling. That's super normal given this context. But once again, the little bit of self-censorship I'm going to ask for here is don't get to the point of asking for violence. Like, hey, I'm really angry at Sam Altman. Okay, that's cool. I think he should die. Not cool. And then the last thing I want to leave you with on this topic of emotional support is let yourself feel. Like there's this tendency we want to put up this armor and it's like say, oh, I'm going to deny this or I'm going to disassociate so that I can't feel this thing and to protect myself. But what's actually normal is to let the emotions in, let them flow through you so that they can actually leave, and then you can convert them into something productive. When you're in the state of this kind of naive optimism where like, oh, everything's fine, and breaking that bubble can feel like this, oh, like now everything's terrible. Why did I have to learn this? Ignorance is bliss, that kind of thing. But that's only part of the picture because learning about reality can take you from naive optimism to cynicism. But that cynicism is not where you stop. It's not where the journey ends. There's a place once you can build up a sense of agency and community, then you can move from cynicism to a more grounded sense of hope, where you're aware of the problems that exist, but also understand that there's something you can do about them. That there's reasons to believe that the track that we're on is not the track that we have to stay on. I also want to say on regarding just the feelings around AI and fears about the future is that any sense of grief, fear, and anger that you might be experiencing, just remember these feelings only make sense because there is something worth protecting. Like if the world was really shit all the way through, there was no redeeming value, then who would care if it ends? Okay, good riddance. Bye, gone. We're kind of happy that we're all dying off or whatever. The end of things wouldn't be bad. There'd be nothing to lose. The reason this stuff is scary is because that isn't true. The world is amazing. Life is beautiful. There is so much here that is good and wonderful. And that's why we care about this stuff. That's why there's this grief and fear of something that can be lost is because there is something to lose. The mind has a way of focusing really exclusively on negative things. So that's useful, but that can also be a trap where one gets so fixated on the fight that you forget what you're fighting for. So just encourage you to remember to keep that broader perspective. Remember what this is all about. And that's another way to help keep yourself healthy in all this. So some other channels, going after all that heavy stuff, back to some nuts and bolts. There's a introductions channel. This is a great place to introduce yourself, tell us who you are, let other people say hi, and see other people as they join and see all the different people who are interested in this movement. Next is local meetups. Right now, this group is very online focused, and we want to get past that. But that's hard because it's a very distributed organization and it takes a lot to get a critical mass in any given area. But one of the other things is that once there are enough people in Pause AI in a particular city, the people who are there need to know about each other. The local meetups is a place where you can say who you are, where you are, if you're comfortable sharing that. Obviously, if you want to keep that private, there's no obligation. But really encourage you, if you're at all willing, to find the city where you are and post there or comment on a post if there's one already, so that people who want to form meetups can know when there's enough people nearby that they have the potential, the interest to get something going. Some other channels include policy. This is where we discuss specific AI bills and proposals, pros and cons, lobbying and protesting. This is some places to coordinate and strategize on specific effort. Media is a good place. If you find an interesting article or video, you can post it there. There's also a Twitter channel specifically for stuff that happens there. There's news, where if you see kind of a news article, you can post it here and create a link and description as to what's going on. Other people can comment. For sanity purposes, because there's a lot of scary news, you can apply filters so that you only see the good news or only see stuff that's relevant to the United States. Whatever your topic of interest is, you can filter things down. There's alignment channels. So for those of you with a more technical background and want to hear the latest developments in AI safety, also a job opportunities channel for someone who wants to get involved in a sustainable sort of way in alignment, governance, or whatever else, so that you can pay the bills while working on this kind of stuff full time. Whereas Pause AI is really all about volunteers. So I mentioned on looking at the events list, that's a place to go for online meetings. I spoke about that a little bit. A couple of regular online meetings I want to highlight. One is the weekly welcome meeting. This is for new members. I run this on a weekly basis. And this is where you can come to share your specific concerns about AI, see some other people in your community face to face, and ask me anything, whether it's about AI, about Pause AI, about AI safety, anything that's on your mind. There are no stupid questions here. The priority is for new members, but if you've been around for a while, you're also welcome to join in and just have some informal conversation. There's also weekly action meetings where people can say what they've been working on and hold each other accountable. There's a email writing workshop that happens on a weekly basis. One project that's especially useful if you're only going to do one thing is writing to your politician. Because right now, this may change in the future, but right now, probably the best impact versus time spent is in sending emails to your local politicians. It's fast, it's easy, and we have an email builder on the website that can help you get a template going that you can customize to yourself so that it doesn't take terribly long. What I want to emphasize about emails is that politicians want to hear from you. They have tech lobbyists speaking in their ear all the time, but their job is to represent the people. And they know that the tech lobby's views is not the whole picture. So they want to hear what regular people are thinking about because they want to get reelected. They want to know their constituents' interests. So if one person is interested enough to say something, that indicates that there's a lot of people who also care about the same thing. You don't have to be incredibly well articulate and versed in all the issues. Being authentic is more important. And if you're still nervous about it, there's people in Pause AI who've already spoken to politicians. They can show you the ropes if you want to feel a little more confident in advance. Another regular event is the Undenial Club. This is a regular online meeting that's specifically focused on emotional support. There's only so much that can be done in text on a channel. And then there's a variety of one-off events. Check out that calendar to see all of them. If there's an event that you want to host, maybe some special skill that you have that you want to turn into a workshop, message me or one of the other organizers, and we'll help you get that set up. Thank you for joining Pause AI. I just leave you with a couple things. First, you have power. Society's worked really hard to atomize us and make us feel like our opinions don't matter and have no impact on the direction society goes. We need to change that. You'll be amazed at once you start getting involved and you working with other people who are involved, just how much of a difference you can make. And your community has your back. If you're trying to accomplish something, there's likely other people who want the same thing. If you can make that connection, then you can help each other out. Together, we just accomplish so much more than we can on our own. AI is a very technical subject, but AI risk is fundamentally a coordination problem, and everyone can contribute. Doesn't matter what your background is, there is a role for you here. And all help is welcome. Even if you're busy, you have a job, you have kids, you only have like 15 minutes per week that you can devote, there's something that you can help with. And even if all that is getting educated on the subject and then sharing some of that information with your friends and family, that's a big deal. Now, it may seem that we're still a pretty small organization. There's a lot of energy, but still, this is a pretty small compared to like giant tech lobbies. And yeah, I mean, the odds don't look very good right now. But one thing that's in our theory of impact is that AI is causing a lot of issues right now. There are already artists losing their jobs, all kinds of things. And that's driving our membership more than anything else. The arguments are great, but really, it's people are seeing what's going on and they're wanting to do something about it. And that's just going to increase over time because the power of AI is increasing exponentially and the reaction to it is going to increase proportionately. What we're doing right now, even if the projects might seem small, what it's really about is we're creating the groundwork right now so that when the really big, crazy stuff happens, and arguably that's happening right now, we want to make sure that public energy has a place to go. If it just goes into polarization, if it just falls into the left wing, right wing trap of people arguing about each other, that is a path where things go really bad. And by really bad, I mean like everyone dies. If we can work together, if we can identify what's really going on and all push in the same direction, identify the sources that are really creating the problems rather than fighting each other, then we have a chance. Which leads to the idea that all the stuff happening with AI, it's moving towards a crisis. That crisis is also an opportunity for us to take back our democracy, change this whole dynamic where whatever makes the most short-term profits is the only thing that sets the course of where things go. So that what the people want is what runs the show. And if we can do that for AI, then imagine how much of an impact that's going to have on everything else. This is a chance to really remake society in a very fundamental way. And the outcome is not determined. It kind of feels like you're just following on this path. Technology just marches on and there's nothing anyone can do about it. That narrative has some truth to it. There are certain things where if you push in this direction, you feel like you're going upstream and it just washes away. But it's not the whole story. There are moments of crisis and chaos where the agency of small groups of individuals has an incredibly outsized impact on the direction that the world takes. This is your opportunity to be a part of that. I joined PauseAI because I believe that we can survive this. The question to be asking yourself is, do you want to be on the right side of history? Thank you for joining. I'll see you on the protest line.